Hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about a costume drama that I find very frustrating, but for some reason I like it, the 2004 adaptation of He Knew He Was Right, based on the 19th century novel by Anthony Trollope. Well-to-do Englishman Louis Trevelyan, Oliver Dimmesdale, falls in love at first sight with Emily Rowley, Laura Fraser, eldest daughter of the governor of the Mandarin Islands. Louis marries Emily and brings her and her sister Nora, Christina Cole, home with him to London, where his sheltered, spirited wife does her best to fit into society. They're blissfully happy and welcome a little boy, but 3 years into the marriage, Louis becomes suspicious of his wife's relationship with a lifelong friend of her father's, Colonel Osborne, Bill Nighy. Fear of the gossip that may arise from Osborne's daily visits quickly turns into bitter jealousy, though Emily insists she's innocent of wrongdoing. Their strong-willed natures clash, sparking the tumultuous destruction of a once happy marriage. It's not the kind of drama I usually like to talk about, is it? First things first, no, I have not read the book. I have looked into it a few times, but it's over 800 pages long. That alone isn't sufficient reason to avoid it, but while I have seen a few adaptations of Trollope novels, when I read a little Trollope, I didn't care much for the writing, which is strange because it's not unlike Dickens, and I love Dickens, but I found Trollope's style so unnecessarily verbose, it was almost self-indulgent. Now, what I read was a novella, and the story was frivolous. It was extremely lightweight and pretty silly, which may have made how wordy it was seem even more ridiculous. I am willing to give another of his novels a try sometime. I've got a couple on my reading lists, but I don't think I would choose this one. I have seen this miniseries 3 or 4 times, and I find it maddening, like I said, so the idea of re-experiencing it in a more detailed, drawn-out format sounds like a punishment. Now that I've offended any Anthony Trollope fans who are watching, the screenplay was adapted by Andrew Davies, who condensed over 800 pages into just 4 hours of content. Louis and Emily Trevelyan's marital troubles are the main focus, but there are other relationship conflicts that play out simultaneously, featuring a cluster of colorful supporting characters. There's Louis's friend Hugh, a newspaper man cast off by his aunt for his radical views, who falls in love with Emily's sister Nora against her father's wishes. There's Mr. Glascook, a very good and wealthy man who loves Nora, unaware her affections are engaged. There's Hugh's sister Dorothy, who goes to stay with their aunt and falls in love with her heir, Brooke Burgess, unaware that a match between them would be forbidden. And there's the plight of Mr. Gibson, who wants to marry Dorothy's future inheritance after spending the last 7 years flirting with the French sisters who vie for his attention. As is often the case with these British miniseries, many of the cast members are either actors I've seen in tons of other period dramas, or actors who are much more famous now. I'm sure you recognized a lot of them. The cast is one of the miniseries' greatest strengths, and there's not a sour performance in the bunch. Well, except for the actresses who play the 2 American sisters, I just find their accents and their personalities so grating, though I suppose they sound just as phony as any other tacky American character appearing in a Victorian drama around this time. And little Louis doesn't do much either. If they wanted him to look out of it or perpetually forlorn, I guess he did what was required of him, but he doesn't connect with the actors and he just looks sleepy all the time. I know, he's just a little boy. I do find the main storyline exasperating. The title is He Knew He Was Right, but as you may have guessed, he was very, very wrong. We're only 6 minutes in when Louis confesses his jealousy. We see his wife's friendship with Osborne, who by the way is her godfather, first from Louis's perspective, the ticking clock exaggerating the duration of the visit, and we see what Louis imagines is going on between them. But it's important to understand that this is not real. Louis falls prey to Shakespeare's green-eyed monster. I think it's a good story and it's well acted. Trollope has some provocative things to say about Victorian notions and laws regarding a woman's place within a marriage and a man's right to take a child away from its mother. Much of the social commentary is still relevant, and psychologically speaking, Louis's downward spiral and its sphere of influence is interesting. So why do I find it so frustrating? Well, for starters, we're only 17 minutes in when Louis forbids Emily to see Osborne again, and they have their first argument. They separate around 30 minutes in. So at that point, I'm thinking, this is going to go on for another 3 hours? A half hour into the second episode, Louis mentions they've been separated for 2 months. 2 months? It feels like it's been 2 years! Also, if you've been around here for a while, especially if you've heard me review some contemporary romance novels or young adult romance novels, you know I'm not too fond of stories where the main conflict stems from assumptions, misunderstandings, poor communication, and half-truths. That's partly what this is. Also, the stubbornness and pride of both of these people is irritating. Really, they're both in the wrong. There are times when I think Emily could respond differently and maybe diffuse the situation, compromise a little to save her marriage without compromising her principles or going against her convictions. But there does come a point when that ship has sailed, basically once he starts making insane demands. He is so adamant that she cheated that he will, supposedly, only be satisfied if she lies and confesses that yes, she did, which is messed up. He treats her like a prisoner, he has her spied on, he turns into a skulking, sneering ghoul who believes the worst of everyone. He says nonsensical things like, "How could you betray me with this man, of all men?" As if it would have been okay if she betrayed him with someone else, which she didn't. And really, if he's suspected her with no proof of having an affair with one man, he trusts her so little, and when she denies it, he doesn't believe her at all. Even if she did confess like he wants, and she did let him forgive her for something that she never did, which is what he wants, and they moved on from it, which does happen sometimes. Adultery is one of those things that usually breaks a couple, but there are some cases where forgiveness prevails and they're able to keep on going in it. That's wonderful. But in this instance, this bizarre case, how long? You just know that it would not be long before the cycle begins again. Once he's decided that she is capable of this and that she is not wholly devoted to him, that's it. The next guy that she smiles at, or that she has a conversation with that lasts more than 2 minutes, or the next guy who stays a little too long visiting at their house, he's gonna suspect. And you just can't live with someone like that. Maybe these two people never should have gotten married. Is it really wise for two willful, stubborn personalities to join in matrimony? I don't know. Seems like a recipe for disaster. But they were happy in the beginning, and somehow they continue to love each other. That's how the story stretches into 4 hours. In spite of everything, they desire reconciliation, and from time to time, Trollope dangles that carrot. And that's another thing that's frustrating, these instances where they have this earnest dialogue and you think, we're moving forward, maybe we're gonna get past this, they're gonna patch things up. But no, he can't let go of it. He's got this fixation, and it's so irritating. But also, I get frustrated because I am torn in 2 different directions. I believe that if at all possible, reconciliation is the desirable solution, the resolution. But at the same time, I feel like, no, you don't want to be with this guy anymore. Like, I wouldn't want to be with someone who doesn't trust what I say, who thinks the worst of me all the time, who's accusing me of treachery and deceit and being with another guy. Like, so I think the turning point comes when Louis himself resorts to trickery and deceit. What he does is technically legal, But it isn't right, and pretty much everyone agrees that, yeah, this is legal, but it isn't right. Also, his expressed desire to grant forgiveness seems like a power trip or an ego thing, and his accusations, along with his appearance, get more and more deranged. But many characters refer to what Louis is doing as madness, and certainly with the desperate look in his eye and the mania that overtakes him, insanity does seem like a possible explanation. And if I view his fixation and paranoia as a mental infection, a sickness that makes him suspicious of everyone and everything, then I do feel sorry for him, and I do want him to get some help. The subplots are not nearly as strenuous, and because they tend to be light, fluffy, even comedic, they provide welcome respite from the anguish and aggravation of the primary plot. There are some parallels among the storylines, innocent parties accused of deceit, rifts and refusals to reconcile, 4 pairs of sisters, and all the women are independent thinkers who speak their minds. So despite what may seem like tonal dissonance, the plot lines weave together surprisingly well. Something that makes this adaptation special, and certainly made it unique in 2004, is its fourth wall breaks. That trend has been enjoying a recent surge in popularity. Louis and Emily's fourth wall breaks are earnest confessionals, the characters confiding in the viewer whose sympathy they're endeavoring to secure. Osborne's and Gibson's fourth wall breaks are a little more salty because they're trying to defend the behavior that got them into their respective pickles.
Well...
Bill Nighy as Osborne and David Tennant as Gibson are, for many, going to be the biggest draw. And smarmy as those characters may be, they are very funny. I think this is the first thing I ever saw Bill Nighy in. I've since realized that a lot of what seem to be the character's quirky mannerisms are, in fact, his own. I heard him say in a video a while ago that he refuses to do any period project where tights are required because he doesn't have the legs for it. No tights necessary here. And Mr. Gibson is a clergyman with a lofty opinion of himself, a wandering eye for the ladies, and bad manners. I think Louis has the most fourth wall breaks, but Gibson comes in a close second, his a harried attempt to make excuses for himself, and his glances at the camera are like panicky cries for help as he's being pushed into marrying one of the 2 French sisters. Even though he's a heel, Camilla and Arabella are both eager to get their hands on him. Camilla's a hilariously awful human being. She's like a shark who smells blood in the water. The best her own mother can say of her is,
She isn't as bad as she seems.
And while Bella is a little less crazy, she's just as conniving. Do I feel bad for Mr. Gibson, though? No, he deserves it. And anyway, it's awfully fun to watch him squirm. All the side characters are engaging, though, and many of them are likable. I appreciate Nora's tactful but clear way of communicating, "Sorry, I'm not into you," and when she turns down a proposal, she tells the whole truth, again with tact, and makes it clear she's making the wise decision for both of them. It's interesting that Hugh, a journalist, speaks differently from other characters. He's less posh and more direct, in other words, more modern, which befits the character, his class, his profession, his views. I really enjoy his ornery sister Priscilla, a self-proclaimed spinster at 28 who's taken over management of the house from her mother. At first you think she's going to be a disagreeable person, but I found her bluntness a refreshing change of pace. She's strong-minded and doesn't mince words. And she does have a sense of humor. There's a character named Mr. Outhouse, most unfortunate. I have always felt that they should have included more of Matthew Goode, whose character is charming, easygoing, and, again, refreshingly genuine.
He's an excellent man, I'm sure.
No, I don't think he is.
Boswell's an interesting man, a shrewd, proud detective who could have wandered in from a Dickens novel.
Ho, ho. I do believe it's Mr. Fox come to get among the chickens.
He's on Mr. T's side 100%, until suddenly he isn't, partly because the wild look in Louis's eye is unnerving, partly because his wife, another outspoken woman, has made him see sense. Jeffrey Palmer is great as Emily and Nora's staid, stuffy father, Sir Marmaduke, sporting glorious mutton chops. He also gets a really good monologue comparing island life to city life. And Anna Massey is delightful as the aged, imperious Aunt Jemima Stanbury. What I love about her is that, though she often makes the wrong call at first, she realizes her error, isn't too proud to admit she's been wrong, and does what she can to immediately rectify the situation. You expect her to be a crotchety old sourpuss, but really she's got a sweet and thoughtful side, and I enjoy her relationship with Dorothy. I find theirs the most satisfying conflict resolution in the entire miniseries. So that's He Knew He Was Right. It's not one of my favorite costume dramas, and it's certainly not one of my mom's favorites, although she has dutifully sat through it on multiple occasions because I wanted to see it again. It's got some lovely costumes and hairstyles, and the music is good. It has vivid characters and worthy messages. Like Anne Bronte's masterpiece The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which predates this book by 21 years, He Knew He Was Right uses a particular case to question the fairness of marital laws and standards. It does it in a way that's not quite so dark, and throws in these additional themes. Absolute trust is essential in a relationship. Compromise is just as essential, but there are some issues you shouldn't compromise on. It's better to remain single than to marry the wrong person. And while you may feel sure that your judgment is right, maybe it isn't. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have seen He Knew He Was Right, do go ahead and leave your thoughts on it in the comments below. And stay tuned for the next video where I'll talk about what else I saw in September. September ends on Friday, and I'm going to try to get the video out on Saturday. We'll see how that goes. I'm already working on it, and it's a little bit massive, but I'll try to keep it under control. So look forward to that, Saturday, or maybe Sunday, or maybe Monday. Thanks for watching.